Hey guys, what's up everyone? So today I'm going to show you how to paint and distress a bookcase. This bookcase I found online at Craigslist when I was visiting my family in Myrtle Beach, and I didn't really like the look of it, so I decided to give it a nice little spray painting and also sand the edges away a little bit to give it some distressing. I broke this video down to 4 steps, and the very easy steps that anyone should be able to grasp how to use this painting and distressing method. So I hope you guys like it. Let's get started. Alright guys, so to get started here, as you can see, I laid down a tarp on the grass. I do not recommend a tarp like this if you guys are going to try this on your own. I would definitely get a heavier tarp because as you can see the wind's blowing very strong and it's winter here in the south. Being a very timid area for winter, it's about 60 degrees but the wind picks up pretty strong. That's why I'm wearing shorts, but as you can see from the tarp moving, the wind's really blowing, and it really got in my way later in the process of painting and also distressing this, so I definitely recommend getting a heavier one for that. But what I'm doing here is I have a paper towel and I'm wiping the entire part of the bookcase down with some mineral spirits. I figured the people that owned this bookcase previously cleaned it with some pledge or some wood polish, so I just wanted to remove a lot of the wax buildup off of the bookcase, which that'll help with the painting process later. You don't really have to strip if you're using the type of paint that I use, but if you are going to brush the paint on, I decided to go with the spray. I definitely recommend stripping it, but if you use the spray, which goes on I think better with a better kind of silky smooth finish, you don't have to strip, just use the mineral spirits and you're golden. Alright, so for step 2, you're going to apply your spray paint. Now, if you're not doing a bookcase, or if you are doing a bookcase or something, please make sure you remove the hardware. I forgot to do this earlier, so that's why I'm doing it right now. But as you can see in my hand, I have a can of spray paint, and for the spray paint, I use the Rust-Oleum brand chalk paint. You can find it at Home Depot. I have linked all of my products down in the description to make it easier for you guys if you'd like to try this DIY. But let's get started with spray painting. So as you can see, I'm not really layering the spray paint on really heavy at first. I'm just kind of dusting it on in the spots that I want it to get. And as you can see, as we go through, I'm just gonna like give it a really rough coat. I'm not really trying to cover the whole area with the spray paint, but I am trying to give it a nice good base layer so that when I go back to do my second coat, that kind of covers up the spots that I really missed. And this also helps the paint grab to the bookcase, because as I said before, I didn't strip it, I just used some mineral spirits to get some of the wax off of it. And if you put too much paint in one spot before you layer on a base coat, it's going to kind of bubble and get really watery and it's going to look really disgusting and you're going to have to redo it. So if you follow this method, you definitely won't have to redo it and it'll go on nice smooth and really creamy. That's why I like the spray paint, because I think it looks a lot better than brushing it, because sometimes with brushing you get a lot of brush strokes and I don't really like that look. I like it to like really smooth and polished. Even though I went back and distressed it later and kind of destroyed it a little bit, but I just kind of like the finish that you get with the spray paint. It works a lot better for me and it's a lot easier than painting it on, brushing it, and then waiting for it to dry, because I'm out in the sun. Even though it's windy, the paint dried in probably about 15 minutes and then I could go back and I could do another coat. So I was really happy with the spray paint, and when I ever do a project like this, I always go for the spray paint first. So I want to add in here, while I am about to give the back of the bookcase its first coat of spray paint, I chose to paint the back white, but you guys can pretty much do anything you want here with this. You can paint the back a different color, you can put some wallpaper back there, you can do tacky paper, anything you can think of you can pretty much put back there. In my room I have very simple furniture pieces and I like to really dress them up and make them look very extra with accessories, so I like to keep the furniture very simple because a lot of my accessories tend to get very heavy because I look for a lot of sculptures. But you can pretty much do anything you want here with the back. Like I said, you can paint it a different color, you can put some wallpaper in, so you really have multiple options that you can do with this back here and you guys can get really creative with that. If you do decide to try this, I'd love to hear what you did in the comments below, so please comment and let me know if you tried this out and what you did for the back. Okay, so I'm about to start my second coat here. As you can see, I have everything kind of rough coated with the spray paint already, and now I'm going to go back in and give everything its final coat. For this project, I did end up using about 3.5 cans of spray paint, and then 1 can of overcoat. So that's really not a lot when you're using spray paint, and spray paint is going to cost you a little bit more than the can of paint, because the can of paint really takes you a long way. But again, like I said, this finish goes on a lot smoother and it's a lot easier, and the time it takes to complete it also is a lot shorter. So if you're willing to sacrifice a few extra dollars to make the process go by easier and quicker, it's definitely worth the few extra dollars if you ask me. Now I don't really show me painting the shelves, but you can see here that I did start painting them a little bit, but I decided to do them off screen just because the wind got a little strong and I had to move them to a different spot because the tarp wasn't really cooperating with something flat laying on it. As you can see, it's blowing up and touching it and everything, and there's also grass just kind of blowing around every way there. So if you see me wiping some off in some places too, that's also me trying to get grass off of it, even wet paint, which you'd have to go back and spray it again. So I definitely recommend doing the shelves in a different spot if it's windy and maybe not doing it on the ground. But I did that off screen, you just can't see it. Alright guys, so step 3, that's distressing. This is my favorite part. This is kind of where you really get to be creative and you really get to play around with the piece. And don't think it's going to harm it in any way. For this I used 120 grit sandpaper, which is pretty fine. You don't want it to be too fine because then you won't get nice edges with it and like scratches from the sandpaper, but you also don't want to use a really heavy grit as well because it will really mess up the furniture and gouge it rather than just kind of scraping the paint away. But as I can see here, I already started kind of lightly brushing the sandpaper over the edges in some spots. And really you don't have to do it in every spot either. You could do some, you could miss some, or you can go over the whole thing like I did with the sandpaper. I just like the edges to look like they're scuffed a little bit, but you can go on the top of the shelf or on the top of the bookcase and you can kind of rub away some of the paint there to maybe make it look like something was sitting there for a while and it got kind of slid around and scratched some of the finish off. But I just like the edges to look distressed. I don't really like a lot of that really shabby, chic, distressing. You can do that if you like that kind of style, but for me, I just like the edges to look like they're scuffed a little bit, and that's what I did here. Alright, so for step 4, you're going to apply your top coat. For this I use the same brand as the spray paint, the Rust-Oleum chalked version. This is in the matte clear color, and this is just a protective layer. It adds a protective coating to it, and it also enhances the color. And this you can kind of see, I didn't see it at first when it was showing up on the camera, the back kind of looks like it's unfinished and missing some color in some spots, but I think the top coat kind of helped bring the color out in this. In person it does not look like that. I don't know why the camera's picking it up like that, but it's definitely not looking like that in person, so don't think it's going to look like that if you guys do it. But as you can see, I'm just applying a light layer to this. Now for this you don't have to use this spray, you can use a polyurethane if you want, but I didn't want a shiny finish from it, so I decided to use the matte clear finish of this spray, and again I didn't want to brush it on. So this works a lot easier for you and it dries a lot faster as well. I do recommend letting your piece air out for a couple of days though, because after putting this in my room, the smell does tend to get a little strong. Alright guys, I got this bookcase finished. I went out to HomeGoods late last night and I got some accessories to put on top, and I also used some accessories I already had. But I am really happy with how this turned out. I think this kind of rubbed edge distressing technique is something that I'm really into right now, and it just kind of gives this piece a lot more character than what it looked like before. Now you guys don't have to distress it this much. You can also just kind of rub off some edges depending on how much distressing you want. So this is very versatile, this technique, depending on how much you want it to look kind of antiqued and old. And I was also really happy that this bookcase I found was actually actual wood and it's oak, and as you can see the spray paint kind of soaked into all the nooks and crannies here and kind of gave you that depth kind of grainy look. So I'm very happy with how this turned out. It looks beautiful.